Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a mean machine in red and black. It's a mean machine in red and black. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Than the drunk obnoxious Georgia fans. Than the drunk obnoxious Georgia fans. Go, go! Go, go!
What's up, y'all? This is John and Mike back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight we have on one of our favorite guests, Grayson Weir, back on to talk about the Ole Miss Rebels for the game this weekend in Oxford. But before we get to all that, how you been? What are you drinking?
Man, life is good. No complaints. I mean, Ole Miss, we'll get into it. So there's a little bit of stress there, but other than that, life is good. And I think this happened last time too. I'm not drinking tonight. I've got a big postseason volleyball match here in about an hour and a half or so. We coming into playoff time, semifinal game. So I'm sticking to water tonight. And for those listening who are not familiar with men's volleyball, no, we do not wear spandex.
Oh,
Damn.
yeah, that's a shame.
Bad.
You probably should.
I got asked that my first day of college. I went down from Connecticut to Ole Miss, and I walk into the dorm room floor, and they're all from Jackson, Mississippi. And what did you do in high school? Oh, I played football and volleyball. Volleyball? You wear spandex? No, I didn't. I wear normal shorts. So just wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, not drinking tonight. But what are you guys sipping on?
I just got some water as well. I had too much fun watching the cocktail party Saturday. So again, during the week, try to keep it simple, whatnot. Not doing any nicotine pouches either. So doing stone cold sober today. John, how about you?
I got a Diet Coke. I drank all of my beer yesterday in the hot tub at the condo, and I haven't had a chance to go get any more. But I do have a nicotine pouch in, so I got something,
At least we got a buzz somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Ole Miss. So going into this season, we all expected this game to be two top 10, if not top 5 teams. And Ole Miss had some blunders earlier in the season, and y'all know how disappointed we are in Georgia's performances so far. But this is still an exciting matchup nonetheless. Lane Kiffin and most people are mad about it not being a night game, but
Yeah.
LSU and South Carolina get all the night games.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And I think this should have been a night game. I mean, I think anyone can agree. Even the folks down in Baton Rouge, I have some buddies down there that were giving me a hard time. But even they're willing to admit, like, yeah, there's no reason that Ole Miss and Georgia shouldn't be a night game, especially with the Rebels. We didn't get a single night game this year, which is just totally bogus.
It's wild.
You know what? I'll say this. You want a night game? You can't lose to Kentucky.
It's fair. I mean, Georgia's first night game of the home schedule is Tennessee, which is
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's been nooners and 3:30.
That's ridiculous. Stupid Baton Rouge, man. And why are we catering to those Cajuns?
I get it if Ole Miss and Georgia was any other weekend, it would be a night game.
Yeah.
Alabama LSU has been a night game almost every year out of the last 20.
Mhm.
So I get it to an extent, but at the same time, like LSU and South Carolina can just almost bank every week on playing a night game at home.
Yeah, it really is. It's pretty remarkable. And I get it, right? Like you're looking at Death Valley, you're looking in Columbia, Sandstorm, all that stuff. But it's like, yo, Ole Miss and Georgia got rocking, environments in a night game too. It's like, what's really the difference between calling Baton Rouge and, well, Ole Miss is just, I saw the light, so that's probably not a great example, but what are we doing? Like this should be a night game.
At least y'all have a song or something. We don't have shit.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what it is. We need a song.
Going into the fourth quarter for Georgia, it used to be Power by Kanye West, and then Kanye did Kanye things, and they quit doing that.
Ah, interesting. Well, hey, A&M brought it back. You guys should too.
Well, we have actually been reaching out to the in-stadium DJ at Georgia for 2 years, trying to get him on the show to talk, but also be like, hey, there's this guy out of Atlanta, big Georgia fan. His name's Jeezy, if you haven't heard of him. And he has this great hype-up song called Put On that we have talked to Georgia players about, and they say that song is bumping in the locker room before every game. Fourth quarter, the lights, Jeezy, it's made to be.
It makes sense to me.
But
Almost too much
apparently,
sense.
even the players on the team can't get a hold of Sir Foster over at Sanford, so it's a little disappointing.
Exhausting. These
Mhm.
DJs, man, they're just big time in us.
I know. All right, so getting into the team, Ole Miss's offense is still elite, second in total offense, fourth in scoring offense, first in passing offense, and the lowest offensive ranking they have is 45th in rushing offense. So, how much is the Judkins transfer hurting the team when it comes to the running game?
Um, this is y'all Georgia fans might laugh. I don't think at all. The offense has been cooking this year. I mean, when you look at both losses, right? I mean, really, this team is 2 plays away from being the number one team in the country, undefeated right now. You know, if you stop that touchdown in overtime against LSU, and then really there was a fourth down against Kentucky, this team is 2 plays away from being undefeated number one team in the country. The offense has been cooking for the most part throughout certainly the early season against the lesser opponents. Then you kind of look at the 2 losses, and the play calling was the issue, really, with the offense in both of those games, outside of the first drive, which is interesting because Lane Kiffin has a pretty heavy hand in that first drive. And then he kind of gives the keys over to Charlie Weiss Jr., who has drawn, I don't even know if criticism is the right word. Like he, we've been calling, we being Ole Miss fans, um, not necessarily myself, but a lot of Ole Miss fans have been calling for his head, dating back to last season. And the last 6 quarters, really, when you look at Arkansas and then the 2 quarters before that, have been awesome. And Lane praised Charlie Weiss Jr. for his play calling after last weekend's game. Um, I personally, kind of conspiracy theorist, put on my tinfoil hat here. I think Lane's been calling a lot more of the plays over the last 6 quarters, which is why this offense has looked better than it did against Kentucky, why it did against LSU. So to tie that back together, I don't think the lack of Judkins really has been the problem at all. You know, they did a great job of going in and replacing his production right away by bringing Henry Parrish back after a really strong year as the bell cow back at Miami. He has more rushing touchdowns than Judkins this year. Obviously, Judkins splitting the backfield with Henderson up there in Columbus, but he has more rushing touchdowns, equivalent yards, pretty much the same yards per carry. So I don't think the Judkins loss has really hurt the team at all. And this is petty. I'm going to say it anyway because I think it's hilarious. This is definitely like a cherry picking stat. Ole Miss defensive tackle JJ Pegues, he is 325 pounds. He has 6 rushing touchdowns this season. The defensive tackle does. Quinshawn Judkins, 6 rushing touchdowns this season. So to answer the question, I don't think Judkins has hurt the run game at all. Henry Parrish has been awesome. Matt Jones, the walk-on who has kind of emerged as a really prominent rusher, has been pretty solid this year. Ulysses Bentley, I think we'll get into down the road. But yeah, I don't think the Judkins has been a huge loss. In fact, I would go so far as to say, as him being gone is actually a net positive for the team because he was a little bit of a locker room cancer. So
Hmm.
I think this team is better off without Judkins. I just question a lot of the play calling when it comes to why this offense has had some struggles at times.
So both John and you have been high on Ulysses Bentley, but he's third on the team in rushing yards behind Henry Parrish and Jackson Tart. Is there a consistent solution to the rushing game?
Yeah, so this is a weird one, and I know the last time I was on, I was tooting the horn for Bentley as loud as I possibly could, and I will still continue to do so. I think Ulysses Bentley is an awesome running back. He was better than Judkins last year when Judkins was on the team. Um, Nobody really knows why he hasn't played that much this year. People were really frustrated, people, myself included, this time, were really frustrated that Bentley didn't get really any touches through the first 3 games of the season. There's some speculation maybe he did something to piss off the coaching staff. Maybe there was some sort of like he had a little bit of an injury coming out of last season. Maybe he didn't take his rehab seriously. I don't have any reason to believe that either of those things are true. But those are 2 of the kind of popular theories for maybe why he hasn't getting any touches. He's been barely worked into this offense despite leading the team in yards per carry last year, despite being the most explosive runner between him and Judkins last year. We don't know why Bentley hasn't played much. Now, that being said, is there a consistent solution to the run game? It's been working. Our run game's been really good this year. In fact, I would argue it's better this year than last year. But here's the thing. Henry Parrish, who came in, he started at Ole Miss, followed running back coach Kevin Smith to Miami, played a year, maybe 2 years at Miami, but he was the premier back at Miami last year, played really well, transferred back to Ole Miss this year, and has been awesome. He's not playing this weekend. He's out. We don't know what the status is in terms of like long-term success, long-term injury or what. But all we have right now is Lane said, quote, he's out. That's all we got. Could he be back Saturday? Could Lane be playing mind games? Yes. Do I think so? No. I think he's out. And I think he could be out for multiple weeks. So then now, kind of by default, you're looking at a situation where Ulysses Bentley is now RB1. And he has to be, right? Like, you can't keep him on the bench because you don't have your number one running back and you have to play him now. So him, Matt Jones, and then Ole Miss went through the transfer portal again during the offseason and added this guy. His name is Dominique Thomas. He is either the starting running back at Georgia Tech last year or like split carries in a kind of a running back by committee. He has not played. He didn't get any touches the first 4 games of the year. You know, Bentley got 1 or 2, and it was like, okay, wait a minute. He scored a 75-yard touchdown against LSU. It's like, maybe we should get him the ball more. Dominic Thomas has not had any carries. But now this guy's got to step up. And this is why you added that depth in the offseason, because you don't have Paris. So Bentley's going to have to be kind of that number one. And any struggles with this run game, and I know we're going to kind of get back into this a little bit more down the road too, but any struggles with the run game, I would pin on the offensive line more than I would any particular back. Parrish has been great, like I said. Bentley, had a great run, and he's going to need to step up this weekend. Matt Jones, a former walk-on, has done a really good job. I think he's averaging more than 4 yards per carry. And then this kid, Dominique Thomas, it's like, all right, dude, you've been wanting carries. Now it's your time to shine. Go out there and prove it. So consistent solution, I don't know. I think it's really just keep doing what Ole Miss has been doing, just now with 3 different ball carriers.
So, pardon my ignorance here. Logan Diggs transferred to Ole Miss, correct?
He did, and he'll be back next year. He is dealing with, I think it's like a Lisfranc or something. It's a pretty serious injury, and he's going to miss the year. There's a chance you could bring him back end of this month, maybe into the playoff. But if Parrish is playing as well as he was, there's no reason to. I think more than likely you're redshirting him this year medically, and then he comes back and beats the bell cow next year.
I gotcha. I also thank you for saying Henry Parrish is out because he's on my college fantasy team. And
there you go. Yeah, he will not be playing this weekend. Yeah. Well, as far as we know, all we have is Monday. We're filming this or recording this on Tuesday. He said yesterday on Monday, he's out. That's all we've got. So he could be out for practice today. He could be out for practice tomorrow. He could be out for 6 months. We don't know. All we have is, quote, he's out.
I gotcha. So go ahead and moving into the offensive line. And we kind of feel like this is the big elephant in the room for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Tied for 73rd in sacks allowed with 2.11 per game and 67th in tackles for loss allowed with 5.44 per game. What's going on?
It's another great question. For which I don't think really anyone has an answer, including the coaching staff. Ole Miss went and added a lot of depth to this offensive line during the offseason, including, 2 of the best. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Washington won the Joe Moore Award last year and best offensive line in the country. And then Ole Miss went and got Nate Caleppo and Julius Buello from Washington. So you're adding 2 of the best offensive linemen in the country to a room that kind of mostly looked the same year over year. A lot of injuries. That's kind of the big, what's the deal with this offensive line? Injuries. So this offensive line, when you look at what it was supposed to look like back in August during training camp, fall camp, and you say, okay, here's your starting 5. This is what our offensive line is going to look like. I don't think there's been a single game all year where that five has been on the field in their traditional position. There's been a lot of movement at center. There's been a bunch of situations where you kind of move, your left guard is a hybrid player. You got to move him to left tackle, put in the backup left guard. Like there's all kinds of situations this year where this offensive line has not looked like what we expected it to look like. Kalepo was injured, Julius was injured for a little while. Like there's been some issues there. So I think the deal with this offensive line is a lack of consistency. I don't know if that's just they haven't played together a lot. I don't know if it's they've had to switch positions a lot. They've moved around a lot. I think it's just a lack of, hey, this is what we're doing. And now, with that being said, the offensive line is looking a bit more healthy this week than it has the last few weeks. So, if things continue to trend the way that they were on the depth chart that was released on Monday, you're more than likely looking at the first time all season where that five you wanted to start is actually starting in their traditional position. Do I think that helps? I would hope so. Do I know? I don't. And then the other glaring issue, Micah Pettis. Micah has a love-hate relationship, I think, with the fan base, and I think the fan base would say about the same about him. He is one of the starting tackles for Ole Miss and has been for 2, if not 3 years now. He's really, really good when he's really, really good. He's really, really bad when he's really, really bad. And he has a holding problem. So I think that's another part of it, right? When we talk about consistency, when you look at the kind of the starting five as a whole, players in and out, players in and out. And then Micah Pettis is a great example of inconsistency on an individual level where when he's on, he's crushing it. When he's off, that's where the defensive coordinator wants to look at him and say, oh, that is somebody who I can exploit. Let's go after him, and they will. So what's the deal with the offensive line? I'd say a lack of consistency.
Okay. The wide receiver situation's been pretty weird this year. Trey Harris closing in on 1,000 yards and 59 receptions, and the next closest guy is Caden Lee with 615 yards. Outside of Trey Harris, how good is the rest of that room?
This room is awesome. I would argue that Ole Miss has, if not the best wide receiver room in the country, and I know Georgia's obviously going to stake claim equally as
No, they can't catch the damn ball.
Let's say on paper at least. All right, then let's at least say on paper. Georgia has an incredible wide receiver room. Ole Miss does, Texas does, Alabama does. But Ole Miss is right up there with them as one of the most talented and deepest rooms in the country, which is why there is some of that confusion. It's like, okay, Trey Harris is he hasn't played
in what, 3 weeks?
Certainly 2, but like you're looking at he has missed no less than 8 quarters this year. So 2 full games, really, throughout the entire year. And yet he's still coming up on 1,000. And then you take the big jump off to Caden Lee, and it's like, wait a minute. So this is where kind of all this confusion comes together, right? You're looking at the offensive line and the lack of consistency. You're looking at the run game and wondering why Ulysses Bentley isn't getting the ball. And then you're looking, that all comes back to the play calling, and it's like, wait a minute. Trey Harris is awesome. Don't get me wrong. You want to get Trey Harris the ball as much as you can. He has a legitimate case to win the Blitnikoff. I don't think he will because he can't stay healthy, or has been unable to stay healthy thus far. But he has a case to be in that conversation. And so it's like, wait a minute, why aren't guys like Juice Wells getting the ball more often? Why isn't Caden Lee getting the ball more often? Why isn't Jordan Watkins getting the ball more often? It's a great question. And I think Ole Miss fans are wondering the same thing because, Trey Harris was out last weekend. Jordan Watkins had 8 catches for more than 250 yards and 5 touchdowns against Arkansas last weekend. Yeah. That's a great stat line, right? It's like, okay, so he's really good. Caden Lee, like you said, is the second leading receiver at 615 yards. He's great, but I think a lot of his yardage is just a byproduct of the defense has to key on guys like Trey Harris. You got to put 2 guys on Trey Harris. You got to put somebody on Juice Wells because he's averaging more than 20 yards per catch as kind of the best deep threat on the team. So then it's like, okay, who is open? And Caden Lee is a shifty dude who just finds space where the defense can't. So how good is the rest of the room? Really, really, really good. But then why wasn't that ball spread around more often? I think you look at the play calling. And then you also, I'm not going to criticize Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is arguably the best quarterback in Ole Miss history. I have been high on Jackson Dart since he was a junior in high school before USC. Like, I think Jackson's very good, but it's worth asking, hey man, like, why don't we get someone else the ball? So
Is
it's a great question. Like, why aren't these guys getting the ball? I don't know.
is the Juice Wells on Ole Miss just three children in a suit? Because I'm pretty sure he's missing somewhere.
He is he
Yeah,
is
right.
not. Uh, he's really good. I mean, he's averaging more than 20 yards per catch this year. So it's like if he can get open as the deep threat, throw to him more often. But I think really it's just a product of Trey Harris is always open when he's on the field.
I
He's that good.
drafted Juice Wells in our college league, and he has gotten no more than 9 points in a game. So I'm upset with him.
I mean, no reason to be upset with him. You know, you just look at the offense and you question, like, hey, why aren't we getting Juice Wells the ball? Why aren't we giving Jordan Watkins 8 catches, 254 yards, and 5 touchdowns? Wait a minute. Throw this guy the ball on a day when he isn't wide receiver one, you know? So it's a fair question, and I think everyone wants those answers. And I think when you look at the last 6 quarters, um, the offense has looked much improved in terms of spreading out the ball and getting more people involved. And hopefully that trend continues. And hopefully Trey Harris is good to go. If you're Ole Miss, you obviously want him on the field.
All right, so we're going to move on to defense. And as an Ole Miss fan, it's not very often you get to be excited about defense. So I know
Praise
you're looking
be to
forward to
Pete
this.
Golding.
Yeah, right.
So defense has been phenomenal this season. 22nd in total defense, 6th in scoring defense, 2nd in rushing defense, and the only sore spot is passing defense, being 91st in passing yards allowed, 234.1 yards per game. And this defensive line has been one of the best in the country this season. 2nd in the
Yeah.
country in sacks, averaging 4.56 per game. First in
First in
tackles
the
for loss.
first in the country for total sacks.
Are they?
Yep.
First in the country with tackles for loss with 10.4 per game. Can this line continue their dominance late in the season?
If they can stay healthy, yeah, absolutely. This is what made Ole Miss a national title contender. Obviously, before the 2 losses, now you're sweating it out here. And Georgia fans listening, yes, we Ole Miss fans do recognize that this is a tall task to beat Georgia this weekend. Yes, we understand we cannot lose this game if we want to make the playoff. Yes, we understand we cannot lose again if we want to make the playoff. That's understood in the locker room. That's understood as the fan base. That is understood. And now, so with that being said, right, let's make it very clear. We understand beating Georgia is a tall task. This defensive line is what makes a win possible. It really does. This is the first time, maybe ever, certainly in my lifetime, certainly in my fandom, that Ole Miss has the dudes to compete with a team like Georgia, to compete with a team like Alabama. Maybe not this year, bad example, but Ole Miss has the dudes, and it's what made them a legitimate national title contender coming into the season, and still today, as we speak, there is only 2 losses, so they're still in the picture. Um, First time ever, right? Like Walter Nolan is a lunatic. That
Yeah.
guy is an absolute psychopath in the best way possible. I think he's a head case in a good way. I think he is a total maniac, like somebody who you want in your corner. Obviously, like just a freak of nature kind of guy. In my opinion, if you really break it down, he's the best defensive tackle in the country. And I know that's a bold claim. I really think it's true. And then you kind of look around him. Jared Ivey's a stud. I've been saying that for a few years now. I knew once he got into a system like Pete Golding's system and was used the way he was supposed to be used, he's 6'5", 2 something, 250, 280, whatever. Big dude, just he's a stud. JJ McKees, like I said, perhaps our best offensive weapon, is having a phenomenal year as a defensive tackle. Princely Umamielin, coming over
Nice.
from Florida. Yeah, I bungle that one every time. Coming over from Florida, he's been incredible. Xavier Harris, who is kind of our, when you look at it, maybe third or fourth in the depth chart, been awesome. Even Jamarius Brown deserves praise. Like this defensive line is awesome. And like you said, second in the country in sacks per game, first in total sacks per game. They had 8 sacks last weekend against Arkansas. And if you really look at the tape, and I went and watched it back, and specifically kind of keyed in on this defensive line because they had just a freakish day, 8 sacks. They left no less than 4 on the board. Like it should have been a 12 sack game. And that's like a wild thing to even say. And then it's an even wilder thing to say for an Ole Miss team. Michael, I just noticed, is that juice in your background?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I just noticed that.
We were
So
disappointed
anyway,
when Juice wasn't in Athens last year. We were like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want Herb Street's dog. I want Juice.
Hey,
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 whoa, no.
Ben is not doing well right now.
Well,
Yeah,
I understand that, but last year
Yeah.
I wanted Juice.
well, ¿por qué no los dos, right? But,
Fair.
but yeah, no, we love Juice. But anyway, this defensive line is awesome. And yeah, if they stay healthy, which is an if, right? These Ivy's been hurt this year. Walter Nolan's been hurt this year. Princely came into the year with a shoulder issue. Pegues has been struggling. Everyone makes fun of Ole Miss for their fake injuries, which I won't get into because the rest of the SEC does it too. And Lane finally got what he wanted, which is a rule that prevents the fake injuries. But everyone was saying Jared Ivey was, going down, or not Jared Ivey, excuse me, JJ Pegues was going down with these fake injuries early in the season. It's like, no, he was actually hurting a lot of those times. Now, were there a few fake ones? Sure, absolutely. But Pegues has been injured. This group has been beat up, and so if they can stay healthy, I legitimately and I will never say this again, probably in my lifetime as an Ole Miss fan. I think this is the best defensive line group in the country. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's an easy argument to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You don't hear much about the linebackers for Ole Miss. What are your thoughts on that position group?
It's very funny that we don't talk, we being the nation, doesn't talk more about this linebacker group because they're just as good, if not better than this defensive line. The defensive line is wreaking havoc in the backfield, which then leaves the linebackers to step up and kind of be that second level tackle. I mean, Pooh Paul, who came in from Arkansas, he's leading the team in tackles this year. Right behind him, you've got TJ Daugherty, who came over from Clemson 2 years ago. He's second on the team in tackles. And then Sunter and Perkins, I'd argue he's more of an edge rusher probably in this Pete Golding system, but he's only 6'1", 230 something only. 6'1", 230 something. You could argue he's a linebacker, right? And he's been just a freak this year. I think defensive player of the week in the SEC, if not once, if not twice, then certainly once. So I don't know why this linebacker group doesn't get as much shine as it deserves. Maybe because the defensive front is so dominant. But when you look at the top 5 leading tacklers on the team, 3 out of 5 of them are linebackers. And Pooh Paul, I think, yeah, he leads the team in tackles, but I think more so, you could argue that he is kind of the lifeblood of this defense, where he is that he's got the green dot and he's calling the defense and he's keeping this team together and he's working closely with Pete Golding. Where credit to Pete Golding, has been amazing this year, but credit to Pete Golding, he allows his players to have input. So if Pooh Paul sees something at the line of scrimmage that he thinks works, Pooh Paul's allowed to make that call. And he's been awesome. Daugherty, like I said, has been awesome. Perkins is just a freak. So I don't know why this linebacker group doesn't get as much love as it deserves, because they've been awesome. This defense is really incredible. Excuse me, it's really incredible. And like like you said, John, at the jump, I haven't been able to say that ever. I don't know if I will again.
So going into the secondary, they have struggled a few times this season, allowing 337 yards and 3 touchdowns against LSU, and in a winning effort, 365 yards against Arkansas. What's the deal with that group?
It's funny. You guys have the same questions we have. Well, I think the LSU thing, JJ Cannady, he was just barbecue chicken that game. He really got burnt, and he gave up. He was the one, that poor guy, man, for the rest of his life. That picture of him, I'm sure everyone's seen it at the point where, shit, I can't even think of the LSU receiver's name who caught the touchdown, but Cannady is standing on his head, essentially, just totally lost, had no idea what was going on. He got cooked that game. And so, you're looking at 337 yards and 3 touchdowns against LSU. First and foremost, LSU's got a great passing offense. Garrett Nussmeier's legit when he is good. When he's not
Yeah,
playing well, he's terrible, right? We've seen him
yeah. We've
pull
nicknamed him
pull a
for
Will
years,
Levis.
Bussin' Us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
Don't
ready to
bust
bust in
us.
us.
He's bussing us.
yeah, I love that. And so he's good. It's a good offense. It's a good passing game, especially when they were healthy, especially at the beginning of the year. Canada got cooked, and then the Arkansas. You look at 365. I think that's just a matter of one. They also have a good offense. Bobby Petrino has been calling a pretty good scheme this year. I think Sam Pittman's probably on his way out. I think if you're Ole Miss, you go and hire him as the offensive line coach. Um, but anyway, Arkansas 365 yards. That was just a matter. Ole Miss got up so early they had no choice but to throw the ball, and try to keep pace with the Ole Miss offense. And they have a good offense. So when you look at that number, yeah, 365 is not great. Um, all things considered, I mean, I don't know if Arkansas, they were without Jackson, like they weren't really running the ball after the first quarter. So 365 yards passing for a good offense in essentially 3 quarters of only passing the ball. I don't think that's all that bad.
Mhm.
Um, and then you mentioned, right, like Trey Amos is probably a first round talent. So this secondary is good. They just need to kind of have it all click at the same time.
I will say, going back to your Sam Pittman comment, I think Lane will have to have a gladiator battle with Kirby for the honor of
Yes.
hiring Sam Pittman.
Yeah, I mean it'd be a great hire for Georgia too. I don't know if Ole Miss will do it. I don't. I'm just
Well,
speculating.
and Sam may not even want to coach anymore. I think he said Arkansas was going to be his last stop. He's going to retire and
Oh, really? Okay, so that
whatever.
could be
So
it too. But Rehab U is down in Oxford now. So if
yeah,
any coach gets fired, they're coming to Oxford. This is my favorite storyline this season that's not being talked about enough. Joe Judge. Sorry, going a little off the rails here, but Joe
Okay.
Judge is our he's considered the analytics specialist. Um,
interesting.
which let's kind of break this down in 2 parts. First and foremost, Joe Judge, we saw him as the head coach of the New York Giants. Guy is not an analytics guy. he, he
Doesn't
is
believe in
not.
numbers. So yeah.
Right, doesn't believe in numbers. So the fact that he's your analytics guy is hilarious in the first place. And the second thing, when you really consider what his job is, as I mean, he's actually worked really close with Jackson Dart this year. He's been involved in a lot of things. Like credit to him, he's been a really great addition to this coaching staff in a analyst role. But special, what did I say? Analytics specialist, right, or whatever you want to call that title. His job is to look at a book, see what the book says in terms of whether they should go for it or not, and then tell Lane Kiffin what the computer and the book says. So when they say Joe Judge is the analytics specialist, no, Joe Judge is the middleman for the book. So I love when the broadcast like cuts to him on the sidelines and they're like analytics specialist Joe Judge. No, message relayer Joe Judge does not make the decision whether Ole Miss is going to go for it on 4th and 1 at the 30-yard line. The book is Joe Judge is telling Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is making the decision. So I just think that's hilarious.
As long as Jackson Dart doesn't fall into the Daniel Jones category with Joe Judge being around, I'll be happy.
Yeah, having Joe Judge on the staff this year has been a really great addition, and I know Jackson has talked about that a few times, and Lane has said that too. I mean, the fact that now Rehab U lies in Oxford is really cool, because you have a lot of different perspectives from guys who know, like Joe Judge knows what he's doing. He was not prepared to be the head coach of the New York Giants, but he knows what he's doing. So having his input on something, it can't hurt.
hmm Sorry if I was looking distracted. They're doing the top 25,
Oh, I
show right
forgot
now.
what's going on.
I
Uh,
actually forgot about that right now too.
So Ole Miss came in at 16, and they're doing the bracket right now.
Sure.
Boise's at 12, and Bama's at 11. And that's all they've gotten through so far.
Okay.
Interesting. I mean, not the Boise part. I think the Bama part's interesting. Notre Dame's 10.
Yeah,
Anyway,
real time reactions. No, this is good. I'm glad you
yeah,
reminded me about that.
yeah,
I've been thinking about my semifinal matchup all day.
yeah. Hey, Army's in the top 25. Who would have thought?
That's great. That's amazing.
Should be higher, but that's a different
Was
story.
Vandy in the top 25?
They
Random
were
question.
not. They were not.
Boo.
That's a shame. Ranked
LSU was just ahead of Ole Miss. They were at
which
15.
that makes sense. They beat
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Yeah, it sucks. They one play away,
yeah.
but they won. So the team that wins that matchup should probably be ranked higher. That's fair.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Ole Miss at 16 puts you in a situation where, yeah, you control your destiny. You win out from here on, you're in the playoff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just win.
At 16, you
Swing,
just
baby.
you can't lose, and that starts this weekend with. We'll get into it, but it's not we like I've said, and I will continue to say it, right? So you guys Georgia fans don't keep coming at me. We know what we're getting into. It's a tough game, but of all the years,
It's 07 light. It could be full on pretty soon here.
of all the years,
Where are we at? Who was one player on offense not named Jackson Dart or Trey Harris that we need to know about?
um, I might be repeating myself here a little bit. I'm gonna start by just saying all three running backs. I think the offense this week, really, really important to know Ulysses Bentley, Matt Jones, and Dominique Thomas, because with Parrish out, those three guys really have to step up because the RPO game doesn't work without a run game because it's a run pass option. And you can't open up the passing game without, forcing the defense to crash the box. So I'm not gonna say one name, I'm gonna say those three. But then kind of putting that aside, I will say one name. Watch Juice Wells on the deep ball. I think the Georgia defense is going, if Trey Harris is healthy and playing, I think Juice Wells gets a little slippery and finds a lane going deep. So I'm going to say watch Juice Wells on offense this week. But then the three running backs, I think that this game really kind of won or lost depending on how they play. Because like I said, can't pass the ball without running the ball. Can't run an RPO without the run. So those three running backs are really important this weekend.
Who is one non-lineman on defense we need to know about?
I already mentioned the linebackers flying under the radar. Poop Hall's been awesome. Daugherty's been great. I'm going to go ahead and say Trey Amos. And I know I mentioned him already, but he's probably a first round pick. If not a first round, he's going in the second round. He's been as advertised this year, when people throw him the ball and defenses aren't really throwing him the ball. So I think that's why he'll be important this weekend is because Carson Beck, if
Loves
Trey
throwing the
Amos,
other team footballs.
well,
Especially in the first half.
that is part of it.
Yeah.
But more importantly, assuming that Carson Beck does not throw Ole Miss the football, if he is trying to throw to his own team, if you look on the edges, I don't know who Trey Amos is going to line up against, but if you put him, you're going to put him out on the edges, which forces then Carson Beck to throw over the middle. And you want, like you guys just said, you want Carson Beck throwing over the middle. So I think Trey Amos is really important on the defense this week to force Carson Beck to not throw to either side or edge and to have to throw over the middle of the field where things could get dicey.
What is one thing you're concerned about this weekend?
The run game. Without Parrish being in, I don't know what this is going to look like. John and I, last time we were on, tooted that horn, fucking blew that horn. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Fuck.
Fucking blew that horn for Bentley as much as we could. He's great. I think Bentley's a really good player. I'm excited to see him get more touches this weekend and have to get those touches. But if there is something we don't know about that the coaching staff has kept him on the sideline for a reason, I have no reason to believe that there is. But if there is, and he comes out and struggles, then you're relying on a former walk-on, and you're relying on a guy who hasn't had more than probably 5 touches this year total. So to say that I'm concerned about the run game would be really understated. the offensive line, obviously you want them to play well, but Jackson has done good things without the offensive line playing well this year. Like I said, Kentucky and LSU, you're one play away, and both of those plays are probably on the defensive side of the ball. Um, so if the run game can continue the pace it has been on, where it has been very good, it hasn't been great, it hasn't been Ashton Genty, but it's been very good. Um, you're in a good position. If the run game is getting stopped at the line of scrimmage, that's when you're forced to pass. That's when things get weird. So if this run game can move, I mean, right, you're asking, there's 4 downs to get a first down. You're asking for 2.5 yards to carry. That's all you're asking for. If the run game can average 2.5 yards a carry, you're in a good spot. All you need is them to get those 4 carries for a first down, right? You don't need them to break the long runs. You just need to force Georgia to come in and actually defend the run, which then you can open up the RPO and kind of some of those uh, even really passes out to the slot where the running back becomes more of a receiver. Um, it all starts with Ulysses Bentley, Dominique Thomas, and Matt Jones. So that's definitely my biggest concern is the run game without
What is
Parrish.
what is one thing you're confident in this game?
I think I already said. I mean, the defensive line. I know this is the best offensive line that Ole Miss has faced all year, without a doubt. Like far and away, Georgia's offensive line is the biggest, the strongest, the most nimble, the most impressive, the most dominant. Um, I still think this defensive line at Ole Miss is, like I said, this is the first time I can remember, certainly, really the first time ever. I mean, even if we're going back to 1960s, the last time, like you weren't having to worry about size, strength, depth. Ole Miss has size, strength, and depth on the defensive line for the first time ever. Um, and so I'm confident they're going to get theirs. They might not have 8 sacks that should have been 12, um, but they're going to do enough to disrupt Carson Beck. And if you can disrupt Carson Beck, like we've been saying, he's been throwing the ball to the other team in the first half. So you cause him some problems. You get JJ Pegues in the backfield. You get Walter Nolan being an absolute psychopath. Uh, you're in a good position. And yes, everyone talks about this Ole Miss offense. Yes, everyone talks about the Ole Miss defensive line. Like that's all great. If that defensive line is playing up to their standard and their potential, and Pete is calling the game that we know he can call, Ole Miss wins. And that's crazy because if you really look at this team, it should almost be opposite, right? You have a team where you should try to outscore your opponent. You don't have to do that because you could potentially stop the opponent. You could potentially have that defensive line step up and hold Georgia on a 4th down, force them to punt inside their own half. That's something that I think will happen, and I think it's the only reason Ole Miss has a chance. If that defensive line doesn't play well, you're in trouble. If that run game doesn't happen, you're in trouble. But I am confident in the defensive line. I'm maybe a little more concerned about the run game.
All right, you ready to pick some games with us?
I can always pick some games.
All right, first game we're talking about, and there's a caveat to this one. We're doing Florida at Texas with the assumption DJ Lagway is starting.
Oh, with Lagway playing. Okay.
Yes. And I say that because the most recent news is
I haven't
Billy
seen.
not ruling him out.
Interesting.
Yeah, not as serious as he initially thought. Yeah.
I would be shocked if he plays this weekend, but I'm down. I'm down to do it this way. Okay.
All right. So with that in mind, Texas 21.5 point favorite, over under 47.5, and we're just asking for a straight up pick, but you can give the others if you'd like to.
If Lagway plays, Florida covers 21.5. Texas is going to win. If Lagway plays, I think the over, because Florida will get in the end zone a couple of times. I mean, look, hey, credit to Billy Napier. This dude was dead in the water. I don't think you can fire him after how this team has been playing the last couple
See,
of weeks.
that's what I've been saying. Everyone says I'm crazy.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think you're crazy at all.
We talked to a friend of ours who's a donor for Florida last week, and they don't have a president of the university right now. So they don't
That's
have
another.
the ability to fire him until they hire a president, which they're saying isn't going to be until after May. And at that point, you have to keep him at least one more year.
Well, could you? I mean, I guess the Florida, booster or whatever money guy that you would know better than I, but I think you can fire him without a president because the AD makes that call. No,
He was saying it is a joint decision that has to be signed off by the president.
so then Napier will stay. Interesting.
He kind of has to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The way
I didn't know
they're
that. That's interesting.
Yeah, the way their bylaws are written, that the president has to sign off on a firing and
Huh.
hiring, and until they have a president, they
Yeah.
can't do anything.
Yeah. You don't do that with an interim guy. Yeah.
And I don't think you need to fire Billy. I mean, as of today, right? Today is Tuesday, November 5th. We are recording this. If Florida loses out by 59,000 points, you got to fire the guy. But the way that this team has been playing, the way that this team has stepped up, certainly with Lagway, I mean, that was kind of his last hope, really, and it's worked. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can fire him. So I think Florida covers this weekend with Lagway plays. If it's Mertz, or not even Mertz, right? Because Mertz is
Yale
just a
transfer.
Yale kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, shout out to the Nutmeg State. Uh,
Warner.
yeah, that's right. I don't know if they can hang in the game, but if Lagway plays, they'll be in it. Texas will win though, either way.
Yeah.
All right, next one was one that no one thought was going to be interesting in August, that now I'm pretty sure everyone will be watching. South Carolina at Vandy. South Carolina 3-point favorites in Nashville, over under 46.5.
Straight. You know what? Screw it. I told myself last year, and I continued into this year. I'm never gonna bet against Diego Pavia.
Yep.
Like I won't do it. And it has worked obviously pretty well so far. Outside of that slip up to Georgia State, this is a potential playoff
In
team.
which he had one of the
Yeah.
best fourth quarters we've seen of anybody all season.
Yeah, right. Like I will not bet against this guy. I will not bet against Pisson Pavia, and I will not do so again this weekend. I think Vanderbilt goes into South Carolina, and I think they come
Oh, it's
away with
at
it.
Vandy.
Oh, perfect, even better. Yeah, they're gonna win. Yeah, I will not bet against Diego Pavia. I'd love to get to that game this weekend, but it's right at. That's right. Yeah, duh. It's here in Nashville. It kicks off right when Ole Miss is kicking off. Otherwise, I would have gone
Mm.
because I freaking love Diego Pavia.
Yeah.
And Jerry Kill's awesome. Like,
The more you read about Diego Pavia's story going back to high school, you cannot dislike the guy. And he's
he's a
playing
little kid.
SEC football at like 5'8" and beating almost everybody.
Like the only person that dislikes him is Hugh Freeze,
Yeah.
evidently, for whatever reason.
And everybody likes when Hugh Freeze isn't happy, so we all love Diego Pavia.
Yeah.
I think even Auburn fans like when Hugh Freeze isn't happy at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another situation to watch. I mean, I'm curious what they do there because you can't run him out of town, but he's been worse than Harsin. So
Yeah. Yep.
you're now relying on Deuce Knight coming in next year and being the prodigal son. That's an interesting one, but yeah. Anyway, the Vanderbilt dude, Diego Pavia is a freaking electric factory. I love him and I bet on him. I want to say at least 10 out of 12 games last year at New Mexico State covered. So far this year, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this because I'm not looking at it, but I'm pretty sure they've only missed against the spread once. This team is awesome, and I think they'll win. I think South Carolina's in a huge letdown spot against a Diego Pavia who, I mean, like even last week at Auburn, he didn't play that well. I think he was like 10 of 31 or something, which like not good, but he's just a dog.
No.
They run like a quadruple option offense that you cannot be right against.
No, it makes no sense, and it's all Jerry Kill. I know they
Yeah.
want to. I know they want to say like, oh no, it's the offensive coordinator, and Clark Lee has had some hand in it. No, Jerry Kill's back there saying, hey Diego, what do we want to do this week? And they're calling that offense. If we're being real.
But you have to give Clark Lee credit for being like, all right, nothing I have tried has worked. Bring in the guy that beat Auburn.
Yep.
Bring in the whole team that beat Auburn. I'll take you. I don't care.
Without a doubt. And I think Clark Lee's a great coach too. I think that's a big help. Like, I don't think it's just Diego. I don't think it's Jerry Kill. I think like Clark Lee's a great coach.
His lack of ego is the reason that he's done so well.
Really well said.
All right. Game where it's all egos. Bama at LSU. Bama 2.5 point favorite. Over under 58.5.
Then we talked about it already. The night game is bullshit. This game should be a freaking 2:30 game, in which case Bama goes in there and beats LSU. It's a freaking night game at Death Valley, giving the Tigers at home.
And the last one, we got Georgia in Oxford playing Ole Miss. When I checked, Georgia were 2.5 point favorites. Over under 54.5.
Yeah, and I don't think that line's going to move, which is really interesting because when you look at from a betting perspective, when you look at the spread here with the money, uh, I wanted to say here, actually, I've got it up. Give me standby, efforting. All of the money and all of the bets are on the dogs, which leads me to believe Ole Miss has a chance. Yeah, so when you look at the splits here, 84 of the bets. Oh my God. Yeah, it's not even close. 84% of the bets are on Georgia. 100% of the money is on Georgia. So nobody's giving Ole Miss a shot. And I understand that. I understand why nobody's giving Ole Miss a shot. Georgia is Georgia.
We don't.
Yeah,
Georgia
right.
is Georgia. Yeah, right. Well, you guys are in there. You guys are frustrated for the first time in forever.
And I don't want to be. I'm tired of this.
No.
I want to go back to being happy all the time.
Yeah, well, sometimes ain't all fucking unicorns and roses. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this. I really can't. But bias hat on, give me the damn Rebels. Bias hat off. I've been saying it since I was on here the first time 2.5 years ago. If we're gonna get Georgia, it's gonna be at home this year, and this team cannot lose again. Georgia can. I think Georgia's in the playoff. I mean, barring a catastrophic collapse down the stretch.
Well, they're currently ranked number 3 behind the least impressive Ohio State team we've seen over the last decade.
But the seeding ends up being great because they would if it held they would face the winner of Penn State Notre Dame. So yeah, that's fine.
So that would work out awesome.
And we would have if the seeding held, we'd have a Bama Texas
first round
playoff game in Austin.
Hell yeah,
cinema,
which would be great. So yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's fine, right? You guys can lose again. Obviously, you can't lose a third time. I mean, you could. Shit, you could go into the SEC championship potentially and lose by a touchdown. You know, there are some scenarios here where you could lose 3 times, but you could afford a second loss, and certainly afford a second loss to a good Ole Miss team. Ole Miss cannot. Am I ruling out a fluke loss to Florida at Florida? No. Am I ruling out a fluke loss to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl? No. Do I think Ole Miss is going to kick the crap out of Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl? Yes. Am I going to rule out a fluke loss? No. This weekend, I think Ole Miss is going to do it. I mean, this team knows what they have to do. It's the best team that Ole Miss has had ever when you look at the roster. The run game, like I said, is kind of my concern. Not having Parrish is a worry. But if they don't skip a beat without Henry Parrish, Ole Miss gets this one. The goalposts are going down. They're going to the bar. Do I think they could turn around and lose to Florida in 2 weeks? Maybe, right? Like it's nice to have the bye week coming out of the Georgia game because you're not in a letdown spot. You're kind of able to, celebrate it for a couple of days, and then take those time off, get healthy, rest up, get refocused, and then go into Gainesville. I like Ole Miss this weekend, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but they need to win, and I think they will. Over under, I think it's probably about right. I think Vegas has probably got it right at 54.5. I think it go either way, right? Like you're looking at a situation where Georgia's going to score, Ole Miss is going to score. But if Ole Miss is going to win, the score probably needs to be under because that means there's been some fluke fumbles or some fluke picks or things of that nature. And I think there will be
this year.
Yeah, well, that's true. We have seen Carson Beck. I think we'll see some craziness, right? Like I think we're going to see, Ole Miss fumbles at the 1. Georgia drives 99 yards and throws a pick in the end. Like there's going to be some weird stuff because these are 2 playoff teams, playoff rosters, I should say. It's going to be a dogfight, no pun intended. It's going to be a good one, man. I really do, and I didn't feel that way last year. I thought it last year was going to go better than it did. It was really demoralizing. Um, I hope I'm not, sitting here eating my words 7 days from now after a 65-3 trouncing. But I don't think so. I think it's going to be close, and I think Ole Miss, the fact that it's at home, that really does. It'd be nice if it was a night game, but it'll be if this was in Athens, it's a problem. It being in Oxford, I think they've got it. I really do.
Is
I
there
really
anything
do.
else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Nothing in particular, man. I just wish that the three of us were getting together this weekend. I know that we've all got life, and we talked a little bit pre-show, uh, about our plans. But shoot, man, like I know that places Oxford's gonna be rocking. I think Barstool's in town. I think SEC Nation's in town. Game day probably should be in town, but it's not a night game, so it's not.
Yeah.
Um, it's gonna be insane, and I know tickets. I will not be there. I got to work this weekend, and my pup had surgery, so I got to stay home anyway. But um, I was looking at tickets just for shits and gigs. Like, what if I drove down Saturday morning, drove home Saturday night? You're looking at no less than 200 to get in that stadium. So it is the biggest. God, it's the biggest game in maybe Ole Miss history. Certainly the biggest game since the turn of the millennium, but probably in Ole Miss history. You can't lose this. I said it before the year. I think I said it when I was on with you guys last time, when we were kind of previewing the season. What was that, back in June? Holy crap.
Yeah.
Um, wow, time flies. I said anything short of the second round of the playoff would be disappointing. If this team doesn't make the playoff, it's like okay, what the hell happened? Whose head is rolling? Not Lane's. I know there's Ole Miss fans out there that are stupid and dumb, just like with any fan base, right? The biggest idiots are the loudest on social media. Like, we get Lou Lane go to Florida. No, stop it. Like, get some help. But if Ole Miss doesn't make the playoff, there are questions that need to be answered. Why? This is the best town in the country, and that starts this weekend with the biggest game in Ole Miss history, certainly since 2000, and it's going to be rocking. It's going to be awesome. I just hope. I know you guys, are experiencing what you would consider a down year of late, but you can afford a second loss. So I hope you guys are, bummed out on Sunday, but then come to the realization you're still Georgia, you're still a top 10 team, you're still going to the playoff. Because Ole Miss, damn it, like this is everything. I don't know if there'll be a chance to get back to a national championship. I think playoff is now in the play, and it's for as long as Lane is in Oxford, and as long as NIL and the transfer portal exists, you're looking at the parity. Uh, this is a national championship roster, and I know we're still so far away from that. And I know 2 losses and a loss to Kentucky. Like, I know all of these things, and I'm rambling at this point, kind of telling myself to, telling these are self affirmations. But damn it, this team is a national championship team, and you got to beat Georgia this weekend if you're going to get into the playoff. Let's start with the playoff, right? Let's start with Saturday. You got to go 1-0 this week. I think they will. I really, really do. I feel it in my bones, and I never feel it in my bones. I felt it in my bones one time, and we took down Alabama in 2014. Ever since then, any game, any given Saturday can go either way. But I feel good this weekend, and I hope I don't look freaking stupid on Sunday.
All right, we got a couple of things to close up on, but we appreciate you coming on and talking to us. As always, it's a good time, and maybe eventually we'll get together on one of these
I mean,
games.
Ole Miss is in Athens next year.
Yeah, no, I was thinking actually of the away games next year. That one would be the most enticing because people listening at home don't give a shit. But I work all day, a lot of weekends in the fall, so I kind of get pick and choose. And this year I had freaking 3 fall weddings,
Oof.
which is just so selfish.
Right.
Like, come on, I don't give a shit about your nuptials. We got freaking top 10 matchup in Oxford. Like, what are we doing? So I'm able to kind of schedule a year out. As of right now, I don't have any fall weddings, and so I've been looking at Athens, and that would be a fun one. So I appreciate you guys as always, man. Like, this is my favorite podcast to do by far. I love talking to you guys. For people listening at home, if you want to follow me, I'm at GSonJW on Twitter. GSONJW. But otherwise, man, it's always good talking to you guys. And
Same.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are disappointed on Saturday.
Hey, if y'all win, I mean, by all means, call the hotline that we'll, post on Twitter
Oh,
and
for sure.
just gloat, man, gloat because y'all.
No, there's no
Yeah.
gloating because then
No,
once
no, if you win, you definitely
You've
you
been
earned it.
saying this for 2 years.
Yeah.
You have
yeah,
been saying this
Toot
for
that
2 years.
horn.
no,
If Ole Miss wins, call the number.
if Ole Miss wins, we're worried about going 1-0 against Florida.
No, you call the number. If
Nope,
Ole
it's
Miss
on to the
wins,
next one.
call it.
It's on to the next one. We'll have a few beers on Saturday night. Come Sunday, it's back to business. But it's a big if. You got to win on Saturday first.
All right, we got to close up on some things, so we'll let you get out of here, but we appreciate it as always.
Yeah, howdy toddy, guys. Talk to you later.
See ya.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, guys. As always, appreciate Grayson for coming on and talking to us. Like I said at the top, he is one of our favorite guests. I think this is the first episode we have done with him that's shorter than 2 hours.
Yeah, we get after it, man.
Yeah, it's always a good time. But if you haven't already, follow us on social media at nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Look us up there. Hopefully you haven't already skipped it because this was the end of the interview. But Barrel House this weekend, watch party. I am giving away more of my tickets. Go to our Instagram, figure out how to do it there. Also, if you buy merch from Millions or you're there at the watch party and buy something from the table that gets you an extra entry into the giveaway, if you buy something on Millions, send me a screenshot of your receipt on Instagram or something so I can make sure your name's in there. But as always, guys, remember there's nothing finer in the land.
I'm a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.